Welcome to this episode of the Bearded Nerd Podcast. Today we're diving into the art of inspiration, where to find it, how to harness it, and how to translate it into unforgettable stories and worlds for your TTRPG campaigns. Creativity doesn't happen in a vacuum. Some of the best ideas come from consuming and adapting other art forms. Personally, I pull inspiration from a wide range of sources, including movies, anime, comic books, manga, TV shows, but more importantly, fantasy and sci-fi books such as Warhammer 40K. In this episode, we'll explore how you can do the same, break down specific ways to adapt these influences into your game, and share tips on turning inspiration into something that feels unique and exciting for your players. So without further ado, let's dive into it. First off, why do we need to seek inspiration? Well, in my opinion, it is one of the most crucial things to do as a game master. Number one, it's fuel for creativity. As a GM, creating entirely original content can feel daunting. Seeking inspiration keeps you creative and it keeps you from not having sluggish ideas, right? It gives you a starting point for new ideas. From there, it broadens your perspective. By consuming different genres of content, different mediums and styles, it introduces a fresh concept that you might not encounter in your typical gaming material. So for example, when Squid Games came out, in my head, I thought of running a mini campaign in a Squid Game style manner. You know how cool that would be? It would have been so awesome to do something of that nature where it's a high stakes, high reward type little campaign within the gaming industry or within D&D specifically. But inspiration can also make your campaign dynamic. A campaign that combines influences from different sources, like a medieval fantasy setting with some sci-fi undertones, it can feel fresh and engage the players in a new, profound way. So if you're looking for a place to find inspiration, these are some of the places that I recommend. Number one, movies. Why? Well, movies provide a complete self-contained story with clear themes and characters and visuals. For example, The Lord of the Rings. We all know the books. We've read the books probably. We probably love the books if you listen to this podcast. The movie is a great way to showcase all the epic storytelling and all the great themes and character development in a contained manner, right? The iconic epic journeys of Lord of the Rings with said strong character archetypes from Arwen all the way down to Tom Bombadil, and the amazing world building that Tolkien implemented all in a contained manner. Now, on the other hand, you can implement something like The Matrix, right? It's a fantastic source for cyberpunk-esque themes with existential questions and a high-stakes rebellion. And for me, how I would use it is I would go and steal one of the plots, or even take a plot twist from it and adapt a dramatic confrontation from it, even, right? So perhaps that one of the players is the quote chosen one and is out there fighting the rebellion, but then plot twist, right? You can add whatever type of plot twist to it and then recreate some sort of tension and chaos in the campaign. That would be a great way to do it, all within a contained manner. Because again, campaigns are basically long form movies or long form TV shows, in my opinion. Now, from an anime manga perspective, because there are so many subsects and subgenres of anime, I want to be specific. Anime and manga can often explore unique, out-of-the-box concepts that translates well into fantastic and fantasy-style worlds. So, for example, Sword Art Online, a fantastic concept of players getting stuck in a world. Well, it may not work for Dungeons and Dragons, but it may work for OVA or one of the more JRPG style games. Or you can even run it where And you can have different systems. I would choose one of those JRPG style systems because it would work a little bit better for the anime type story. But with Sword Art Online, players get stuck in a virtual MMORPG where if they get disconnected or if they pass away in game, they pass away in real life. So you can take that type of concept where maybe the players are playing as themselves who then get stuck in a video game world, and that basically happens where if you're playing D&D, no death saving throws, just bam. They're insta, they're insta unalived. But you can again adjust it how you want and it will work. Not a big deal. But a couple of other examples that I would pull from Attack on Titan. One of the cities in my world is kind of built like the walled cities on in Attack on Titan. But if you're unfamiliar with the concept, it's a great campaign that's centered around survival and existential dread, mixed with political intrigue, which Game of Thrones as a TV show is a great source of political intrigue, but I'll address that later. One Piece is another fantastic anime you can pull from. The kind of idea of found families with people who have unique abilities and just these larger than life villains. Great inspirations, right? You can borrow those thematic elements to create your villains or your NPCs rather, and other concepts. I mean, there's so much inspiration that you can pull from various subgenres of anime and manga that it is just unfathomable. So there's a lot to play with, and you get to read and have an excuse to read. So even better. From their TV shows. And I love a good TV show, especially when I watch TV shows with my family or my friends, but it's a great long form storytelling narrative, or rather, it's a great way to learn how to tell long form stories, right? So, long form storytelling is exactly what campaign pacing is all about. If you want to learn how to tell a long form story, look into shows that have long seasons to it. Honestly, you can look at shows like Grey's Anatomy. You can look at shows like Frasier, which Frasier is a funny, very, very witty comedy show back from the 80s, 90s up till like the 2000s, and then they revamped it. Little side tangent, but great, well-written show. You can look at shows like Game of Thrones, which again, like I stated, it's a great show that shows political intrigue, shifting alliances, the morally gray characters, and it has a lot of great world building and lore to it. Shows like The Mandalorian is another great resource where it has such episodic adventure arcs that has an overarching goal. It's one of the great shows of our generation. I think Filoni and Favreau knocked it out of the park. So I would look into a show like Mandalorian to show your players, hey, this is how I'm going to take you through an episodic long form campaign, right? The Mandalorian is basically 12 sessions of gameplay, right? If you were to look at each episode, essentially each episode is about 1 or 2 sessions. So I would say it is about 12 to 24 sessions long. So both seasons, if I'm being a little bit more liberal with it, is about 2 years, give or take with breaks in between of content of a campaign. 1 to 2 years tops of a campaign. And that's what The Mandalorian is from a TV show translated into an RPG. And that's great. You learn how to tell stories. You learn how to put some filler episodes, so to speak, that kind of give the players or the audience a break. But it still is in pursuit of the overarching goal. So again, great way to structure your campaign and to kind of set each session as an episode building towards a larger story. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention books and literature. For me, new fantasy or sci-fi books helps me gain inspiration for another campaign or for my current campaign, because they immerse me in worlds with deep lore and character-driven stories, and even speculative ideas about technology or society or even human nature. And I've mentioned these before, but I have to say The Hobbit, Dragonlance, great series to read. The Lord of the Rings, obviously, but Dragonlance is a phenomenal series that I highly recommend reading, because it builds a great model for, personal quests and character development of the main characters and how to do that. Now, on the other side of it, Dune, which I love. If you've been listening to this podcast, I love Dune. And it's an amazing political intrigue book. There's also a lot of great religious undertones in the film and in the book, though, as what we're talking about. It is a phenomenal book series. Now, it gets a little weird later on, but the first book specifically would be a great way to kind of usher that in. So that's another thing you can pull from. You can pull the religious undertone from the Bene Gesserit and from, the Lisan al-Gaib and all those other little things that make Dune so great. I highly recommend pulling from there, but that's why you pull from books and literature, because you have this amazing well of knowledge that is ready to be tapped and ready to be acquired. Kind of like Spice in the Dune series. Just kidding, y'all. Now, really quick, before we move on to the last part of our podcast, I want to bring a word in from our sponsor today, which is Dungeon Soap. This episode is brought to you by Dungeon Soap. Are you tired of using boring generic soap that not only leaves your skin feeling dry, but makes you smell like just a boring NPC? Well, we have the solution for you. Introducing Dungeon Soap. Dungeon Soap is a TTRPG themed hygiene company that makes you smell and feel like you just received some bardic inspiration. Dungeon Soap offers a variety of scents that will appease any adventurer. Their soaps, beard oils, and lotions are packed with all natural ingredients that will nourish and hydrate your skin. What I love about Dungeon Soap is that their products are made here in the US and are considered vegan, so it's safe for most skin types, especially if you have certain allergies. Whether you have an active lifestyle, or you work from home, or you're just someone who wants to take care of themselves a bit more, Dungeon Soap has you covered. I personally love Dungeon Soap and use their soaps and beard oils in my daily routine, and that's why we have partnered with them. So, to my fellow bearded nerds out there, if you want to level up your routine, go to their website that's linked below and type in Bearded Nerd 10, all caps. Again, that is Bearded Nerd 10 to receive 10% off your final order. Trust me when I say that you will feel like a million gold after using them. Thanks for checking them out. Let's get back to this episode. Now, we've talked a lot about things that you can interact with from a visual or from a audio perspective, but I want to implement another concept for your inspiration, which is to play other tabletop games or skirmish games and even video games. Things that you can play that I have gained inspiration from is games like Warhammer 40K. I've gained inspiration from the Age of Sigmar, from Middle-earth Battle Companies, from HeroClix, from all sorts of tabletop games, from playing Pathfinder Society with my friends. It brings a new meaning because you're playing with other people, you're learning how they think, and you're learning about other systems and lore. So for example, with Warhammer 40K, you don't have to necessarily play it and buy and invest rather money into it, but you can buy the books and listen to it. You can watch gameplay to learn more about it. You can go on Warhammer 40K podcasts or StarCraft podcast if that's a game that you like. Whatever it may be, you can go there and you can kind of immerse yourself in their lore and in that type of gameplay, whether you're playing passively or actively, and then bring that to your RPG world. You can do the same thing with Pathfinder, with Numenera, Daggerheart, the MCDM TTRPG, which I think it's called Draw Steel. You could do so many things with that type of concept, and with participating in the gaming scene, you can you could play Diablo 4, you could play World of Warcraft. Anyway, you all get the point. But the point is, you can take that and really learn from it while also subconsciously getting, or vice versa, I guess. You're both, having a form of entertainment, you're subconsciously relaxing, and you are also learning about the world, which is then inspiring your current world or your current campaign, which, then expands and expounds. And it's just a beautiful thing. It kind of triggers multiple things in such a good way. And the same goes with video games. Video games immerse you in that interactive world, offering you lessons, not only in pacing and mechanics, but it helps you become a better world builder and storyteller. The Witcher, phenomenal video game, and the books are great. It's rich in moral dilemmas, folklore, and character-driven side quests. Kingdoms of Amalur is very similar. Elden Ring, Mass Effect, so many great video games out there that you can personally utilize for inspiration, and it's right there at our fingertips. So before I close this podcast episode, I want to leave you with a couple of practical tips when you are seeking inspiration. So when you're watching movies or playing video games or reading a book, I want you to do a couple of things. First off, keep a journal. Whenever you encounter an idea, a character, a scene that resonates with you, jot it down. These notes can become the seeds for your next campaign or even an NPC. From there, I want you to mix and match, right? I want you to combine multiple influences to create something unique. So for example, I want you to take the political intrigue found in Game of Thrones and blend it with a survival horror narrative from that of Attack on Titan. That combination alone would draw so many cool players to your table that it's not even funny. And as I've said before in other episodes, but I want to reiterate, borrow themes, structures, and concepts from other genres, stories, music, whatever it may be, but put your own spin on them. Players are always going to appreciate new content, but they will also appreciate it when you pay homage to something without feeling like you've recycled a storyline, unless that is what your players want to do, but they will always appreciate you paying homage to the thing that you gained inspiration from. And if anything, do a what if type scenario. Ask yourself, take a story or a setting you love and twist it. What if the Fellowship had failed? What if they failed their quest? What would the world look like? And then build a campaign around it. If you were in the shoes of the folks from Attack on Titan, what if the Titans were actually protecting humanity? Well, what does that story look like? What happens if Robb Stark specifically was never wiped out from the world? What would happen? Don't be afraid to tell those type of stories either. You can do that, and your players would love that, because most likely, if you're like me, we've all had that debate or that question, what if this happened? What if Superman was evil? This type of what if scenario can make for a really good story. Lastly, make more time to play and read. The more you expose yourself to larger and more unique or robust worlds, the larger your creative pool becomes. Explore genres that you wouldn't normally gravitate towards and see what you can pull from there. Well, and that's it for today's episode of the Bearded Nerd Podcast. Inspiration is everywhere, from the pages of a fantasy epic to the dramatic twist in your favorite anime. The key is to seek it out, adapt it, and make it your own. Whether you are building a world or crafting a single NPC, these influences can help you create something truly memorable for your players. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your fellow players, with your fellow gamers, and keep seeking inspiration in everything you do. Much love to everyone, and remember, keep gaming.